All right, Cameron Kerr is here. You have not been on this podcast before, but you will be in the future. I mean, you will be a face part of the squad going forward at this new company. So I kind of wanted to get folks inundated with you as sort of a part of the team, sort of a background voice, as a producer in a lot of our content, not just my content. So thank you for joining me. Ready to answer some mailbag questions?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I've been doing this with Capper and Steve the past 2 years, so hopefully we can make it flow pretty well. And I'm really, really, really excited about what we got coming and working with you and everyone else on this new project. And I think it's going to be really successful. I think it's going to be really fun and really, really informative. And man, I'm just ready for
We'll get into it
2025 to
because
get here.
I know 2025 can't come here soon enough. One of the questions actually touches on a bit of like the content stuff we're going to have going forward. So we'll get to that when we hit one of the questions, but let's let's lead us off in order. I gave you a list of questions. Like I said in the intro, we're not going to even come close to answering all of the ones that we got that came in. There are some really good questions that I could
Yeah.
honestly spend like hours formulating a very thoughtful response to. So I figure it's better if I give a lower number of questions, really the time of day, and trying to answer them thoughtfully. And then if we need to do a part two down the road, we can bank an episode for the future. But why don't you lead us off here with our first question? Kind of a couple that we're wrapping
Yep.
into one.
Yep. So Rolling Trees, Motown Mike, Chairman Dave, Price 888, they all want to know who to be on the lookout for next year, whether it's someone from the Corn Ferry Tour, whether it's someone to have a big breakout season, like a second year breakout, or maybe like a bounce back, maybe someone who has kind of been slumping and is ready to hit it hard like JT, or sorry, not JT, like Hideki or Taylor Pendrith.
Yeah.
Um, is there anyone that you think you can help, like you can point their direction that would help them out with like fantasy pools or something like that?
Yeah. So I thought a lot about this one because this is a very popular question. And I kind of broke it down into a couple categories because they're all the same question, but each question has a little bit of nuance to it. Like certain people are looking for guys in year two, year three. Certain people are looking for Corn Ferry Tour grads. Certain people are looking for bounce back candidates. So I kind of gave a little bit of everything. The first name that came to mind, honestly, and I'm biased here, was Carson Young. Like I walked away from that interview. I mean, he is literally, and hopefully I'll be able to help him a little bit out in the future. But he's really just scratching the surface in terms of optimizing his talent and his schedule. Like even just speaking to him a little bit after the podcast off mic, you know, he didn't even know that there were people that were analyzing the data at this level, really. I mean, and he has a good coach and a great team and he's doing all of the right things, but I truly believe based on his skill set, like if he can get to neutral around the green, then he's already one of the most talented ball strikers on tour. So I expect him to continue to improve in 2024. I'm super, super bullish on him. Another guy that kind of falls into the category of not necessarily a breakout candidate, but because he already won in 2024, I was on him for his win at the John Deere Classic, but just a name that I expect to continue to ascend is Davis Thompson. Like he is good at everything. If you look at his skill profile, he is above average at everything. His skill profile actually reminds me a lot of like a poor man Xander Schauffele. Like he's got above average driving distance. He's not super wild off the tee either. He's an above average approach player, really, really good short game, and a really, really good putter. So that type of skill set, we've seen that with Xander. Like that is essentially Xander's skill set. And I don't know if this is a guy who is going to win majors. I mean, the ninth at Pinehurst this year was very encouraging, but this is the perfect type of skill set for the modern PGA Tour, right? Like the fact
Yeah.
that he is a good putter I think that he is going to be able to keep up in a lot of birdie fests because he is not the type of guy that necessarily needs to rely on elite ball striking and needs to perform well at golf courses that heavily accentuate great ball striking. The PGA Tour has a lot of birdie fests right now. Let's call it what it is. And if you look at his three best finishes, he won the John Deere. We had him that week. He was second at the American Express, second at the Rocket Mortgage. Those are all incredibly easy golf courses where he hit the ball well, but he kept up in that tournament based on the strength of his putter. And then you mix in the ninth at Pinehurst, where he basically led the field in around the green play. So I think he's a guy that is built to make a shit ton of money in this version of professional golf because he has what you'd want on easy golf courses. He has what you'd want on long golf courses. He has what you want on distance bias golf courses. He has what you want on putting contests. So Davis Thompson, I don't think he's going anywhere. I think he will certainly be around leaderboards quite a bit in 2025. I saw you nodding your head a bunch there. Are you a big DT guy?
Yeah, Davy Tomp, as our friend BK likes to call him. One of the most interesting questions that you asked Carson and that he was kind of surprised at was the fact that he was good in Birdie Fest. What do you think makes a golfer good? Because Carson said that
I
he's
know.
like, man, I've always prided myself on being good in tough conditions, in tough courses because I'm so accurate off the tee because I
Yeah.
can strike the
Great
ball
long
so
iron
long.
player. Yeah.
Exactly. So I mean it checks out. Like he was good at Craig Ranch and he was
Yeah.
good at the John Deere Classic where Davis Thompson won.
Yeah.
Um, what do you think? Is it like a mentality thing?
A little bit. Like I kind of do think it is. I do think it is a mindset. We've heard players like Matthew Fitzpatrick talk about before. Hey, I'm just less comfortable when I feel like I need to get to 25 under. I'm really comfortable at golf courses where I feel like par is a good score. And
Hmm.
I think some of it is mindset, but I do think some of it is skill set. And I do think that to consistently perform at Birdie Fest, you do not necessarily need to be a great week to week putter, but you need to have putting upside. So, like, for example, the rabbit hole has a great tool where you can look at the percentage of rounds that a player gained over, let's say, 2, 3 strokes putting. You cannot consistently perform in Birdie Fest without the ability to have great putting rounds, right? Like, you don't necessarily need to be an awesome week to week putter, but you need that ability to have great putting rounds. And someone like Carson Young, for example, who isn't necessarily a great week to week putter, like when he doesn't have it on the greens, he just doesn't have it. But he does have spike ability. Like he's kind of a streaky putter already. I mean, it's too early to really put him in that box, but
Yeah.
he does have a lot of upside with his
Yeah.
putter. And Davis Thompson does too. And I think those guys are the guys that you want to target in birdie fests.
Yeah, that's maybe it's something. Is it something about the greens on these easy
Well, they're
courses?
generally easier. I mean,
Yeah,
like
that,
you think about John Deere's greens, those are a walk in the park. A lot of the past palm golf courses don't necessarily the greens don't run super fast. They don't necessarily have a ton of undulation to them. So, but I mean, Davis Thompson was awesome at Pinehurst, which has like some of the hardest
yeah.
greens that you'll find on the PGA Tour. So I think it's a little bit mindset and a little bit spike putting ability. Let me give you one more player who, to be honest with you, I don't know how much we will actually see of him on the PGA Tour next year. I just came across him and kind of fell down a rabbit hole with him when I was looking at the data golf amateur rankings and looking at some of the players farther down the board too on the Corn Ferry Tour last year and the PGA Tour of America. You may actually know this name because he's a Baylor guy, but this is a 23-year-old kid. His name's John Kiefer. He turned pro in June of 2024. He had a great career at Baylor. He won on the PGA Tour Americas Tour last year, and then he got an opportunity at the Pro Core Championship on the PGA Tour this fall swing. He finished 13th in his only PGA Tour start, nearly led the field in approach play. So I think he's still going to be playing the majority of his golf on the PGA Tour Americas / Corn Ferry Tour next year. but I do think he'll have opportunities because he got into the Pro Core Championship, finished 13th. I think you might see him a couple times in some alternate events. But anytime you see the name John Kiefer in a field on the PGA Tour, like I said, I think he'll get some opportunities on the PGA Tour next year, at least in the opposite field events. I mean, we're talking about I kind of deep dove him some of his stuff at Baylor and PGA Tour America, which are not working with a complete data set with. But this guy looks like one of the best iron players we have seen come out of college over the last 10 years. This guy has a skill set to be the real deal. His last 10 starts on the PGA Tour Americas, nine top sixes, four runner ups, and a win. Like basically just living on the first page of the leaderboard. So watch out for that name next year, John Kiefer. And then I'll give you kind of a more obvious one that's it feels more pertinent to talk about this player because we're recording this right after the RSM Classic, but hard to not be super bullish on Clanton. Currently the best amateur in the world, truly an unbelievable ball striker. He's already contended multiple times in the PGA Tour, just in contention past week at the RSM Classic. I think he missed multiple putts inside 6 feet coming down the stretch, had a real opportunity to win that event, was in pole position to win that event. Anytime you have the opportunity to bet Clanton next year, the kid is just not scared. He's already got a ton of reps. He's done more contending on the PGA Tour than most players who've been out on the PGA Tour for a decade have done. And he is already, in my opinion, one of the best players on this version of the PGA Tour. I think he could win out there any week. His skill set isn't super dissimilar from Carson Young. Like both of these guys are phenomenal drivers of the ball, great long iron players. I'm usually pretty conservative in terms of buying into these young guys without a lot of experience because, just as Carson talked about, the guys that have adapted to PGA Tour life and have been playing these golf courses year after year and know what hotels to stay at, know what restaurants to eat at, know the green speeds, what clubs to hit off the tee at these golf courses that we see every year. Those guys just have such an inherent advantage over any rookie. So I'm usually pretty conservative with these younger guys, but Clanton's ready to go, man. Like he's got it. He's totally ready to win right now. I'm a believer. So there you go. Carson Young, Davis Thompson, John Kiefer, Luke Clanton. Those are the names that I would watch it next year in terms of younger guys or those in the second slash third years that I think are ready to take the leap. Any Clanton or Kiefer thoughts before I give one or two bounce back or more familiar PGA Tour players?
Yeah, how do you spell Kiefer?
Keefer.
Okay, I'm on Data Golf. I couldn't find him.
Yeah,
Luke Clanton, another guy who did really well at the John Deere Classic.
there you
Gained
go.
6 strokes round one, 5 strokes round two, 4 strokes round three, 7 strokes in round four. I mean, yeah.
Me and BK were watching yesterday. Like he is an absolute flusher, and he made a brutal mistake on the 18th hole. He hit a bad iron shot after putting himself in perfect position off the tee. But I think he, just like Carson, just like good Davis Thompson driving weeks, I think the through line there is that all of these players are awesome, awesome ball strikers that have shown some upside with the putter. So in terms of bounce back, I mean, the most obvious can. Oh, and by the way, I should just mention this is the most obvious one, but I am a Ludwig guy. Like I am bullish on his continued ascent. I am still a buyer on Ludwig. I mean, he contended in two of the four majors last year. He was the best ball striker in the field at Pinehurst through two rounds. I think over the weekend, those greens kind of just gave him something that he wasn't used to handling in the past. But if you can contend at Pinehurst and at the Masters, then you can do it on any golf course. I just think it goes without saying that I don't think he's overrated. I think he is as good as advertised, and I expect his ascent to continue. And this player's kind of in conversation with Ludwig, but in terms of bounce back, I think it's hard to envision a world where Victor Hovland doesn't improve significantly
Oh
uh,
yeah.
on 2024. I mean, I'm still because I'm starting to think about who to pick at the majors because me and Steve have our majors previews coming up. And I think there's still enough there with the short game and the tinkering that I'm not sure if I'm going to pick him to win a major next year. But put it this way, I would be shocked if he doesn't win on the PGA Tour next year, probably multiple times, to be honest with you. And I think that he will be in the mix at 1 to 2 majors next year. I think Quail Hollow is an awesome golf course for him. Oakmont, Oakmont has could get pretty hairy around the greens just because I mean it has that thick rough around some of the greens that's generally good for Victor Hovland, but that's just such a tough ball striking golf course that if he doesn't have his A game from tee to green, so many guys are going to be missing greens at Oakmont that I could see a universe where that goes poorly for him. But I think the most obvious candidate to me is Victor Hovland. And then in terms of another bounce back, now, your guess is as good as mine in terms of how he will perform week to week on the Web Tour, but I would be very surprised if Brooks Koepka does not rebound in the majors this year. I'm not sure if I'm going to pick him to win a major next year. If I was, it would probably be Oakmont. I just think he has the absolutely perfect skill set for that golf course. That golf course is very similar to Shinnecock in a lot of ways, and that is the type of golf course that is going to reward very boring golf. Like you watch how Brooks won at Shinnecock and it was absolutely surgical. Even Oak Hill, like another golf course that's not super dissimilar from Oakmont in the sense that you are just going to get yourself in so much trouble uh hounding pins at that golf course. Like Brooks's strategy in majors to hit to the center of the green, take his chances with a bunch of 20 footers and make the fewest mistakes in the field, that screams Oakmont to me. And he went T26, 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 T43 at the majors last year. So he didn't play bad, like, but he was not relevant to win a major championship in 2024. I'm willing to go on record here. Brooks Koepka will be relevant to win a major
All
championship in
right.
2025. I'm not sure if he's going to win, but there will be a major next year, potentially multiple majors, where late on Saturday afternoon or on Sunday, we say to ourselves, okay, Brooks is one of the live favorites. He will finish top 5 at a major championship next year. So I don't know how much of a hot take that is. I don't know if how much it qualifies as a bounce back. He was actually pretty good on live last year, but like last year was Brooks's worst healthy major season, his worst performance in majors in a season where he was presumably healthy for the entire year and basically a decade. So I think he bounces back next year.
Sweet. So the only comment I have on that is your comments on Ludwig. So I have a few questions. So
Okay.
I like Ludwig too. I think he's a really good golfer. He cashed a ticket for me. I can't remember where on the DP when he played on the DP World Tour, but I think he might have the Cam Youngs.
Ooh.
And what I mean by that is I don't know if he can finish.
Ooh. Yeah, there were some slightly concerning weekend performances. I would have not that I would have loved because I ended up hitting Wyndham that week, but I would have been really curious to see what he did in that final round at Pebble Beach, being in the mix uh, with Wyndham Clark. Just to provide some context, they shortened that tournament uh,
Yeah.
to 54 holes, and I think he was one back of Wyndham
Yep.
entering the final round.
And I
He
think
did
he
have
might
a
have won that Deeper World Tour event like a few weeks after that. I can't remember.
Yeah. No, that was last year. So his deep because he played all PGA Tour last year. So he his Corn Ferry Tour was probably 2023. And I mean he won against a weak field in at the RSM Classic. So he's won on the PGA Tour before. Most of his final
That's true.
round collapses, it feels like, or not even final round collapses, but just kind of fading into oblivion over the weekend have seemed to happen at major championships or events with really tough fields.
Yeah.
So I even think a very strong improvement for Ludwig next year would just be like, hey, go out and win. I think he's going to win a signature event next year, but even if it's just trying to think of what, I mean, he's probably just only going to play signature events in the majors. Maybe there are a few tournaments that aren't signature events that like a Torrey Pines even. I don't even know if he's going to play that or a Phoenix.
What about Sawgrass?
Yeah, I mean that's a big one. That would be a huge win for him. But I would be hyped to see him win anything on the PGA
Yeah.
Tour next year. Like I think you
Oh
look
yeah.
at Hovland's trajectory, when Hovland started winning memorials, I think that's a very reasonable expectation for Ludwig next year. Is like I'm not necessarily expecting him to win a major championship, but I definitely think my expectation is that he does win a signature event next year, and he will win a signature event, and I would view that as a victory.
All right. Well, let's get into the next question and spend some time on this. Walter White 2.0 wants to know if you have any new plans content wise coming up.
Yeah, this is. I mean, I could spend a lot more time on this episode teasing my new company that I'm launching, but I think listeners of this podcast know, and especially those in the Discord know that I should say, because you're a big part of that, are launching our own company in January 2025. That's no secret now. And I've worked my ass off in the last few months getting this together. I'm insanely excited. It's nerve wracking, of course, but it kind of needed to happen. Like I talked about this in a prior pod. I was just at a point in my career where I had completely reached my ceiling, both financially and creatively, doing what I do for other people. Like there was
Yeah.
nowhere for me to go. There was no more freelance articles to write, no more weekly shows for me to hop on, no more partnerships to add. Like I had pretty much reached the point where I was making as much as one could make doing what I do, which was
Yeah.
essentially a freelance golf content provider. So from a financial standpoint, like this was it. I had reached my version of what it was like working a dead end job. And, with a bunch of life changes going on in the next year to 5 years, hopefully getting married, buying a home, starting a family, I knew that it was either now or never. Like you take the risk now, hopefully break through that glass ceiling, and then really start building something for your future. And from a creative standpoint, too, I have a lot of dreams for what I could do in this space. And I say this as humbly as possible. I don't think I have remotely scratched the surface in terms of what I can do in this space. And I've been very fortunate enough to carve this very niche, but also very committed community over the past 4 years of doing this with people following my work. And the one thing that I really haven't gotten to do yet is really build something for them, that is really for them, and frankly for anyone that really cares about seriously making money in the golf betting and DFS space. I think there is a lot of room, for a community where the primary brand is knowing ball and understanding advanced analytics. And I have a vision and way of doing things, and I don't think a community like that exists yet at a larger scale. And I've also built some lifelong friendships in this industry that are also huge believers in me and are really smart in the golf and football space. And I wanted to start something with them too. I wanted to build something that was not just my own, but also that I could share with the people that I've loved working with or working adjacent to over the last 4 years. So the long and the short of it is, yes, there will absolutely be some new content from me in a big way starting in January. I want to ask you, Cam, because you're going to be a huge part of this. Why did you take the risk and come with me? I mean, how was I able to sell you? What are you kind of excited about for 2025?
Man, I mean, any listener of the show knows you and knows how knowledgeable you are. And I mean, really it was just the last couple of years leading up to this. You would come on the golf gambling podcast every now and then, and Steve and Chris would or Capper Boston Capper would go on your show, and I definitely tune into those every time I could. Really, it was just that, and then getting to hang out with you in at
Oak
Oak
Hill.
Hill
Yeah.
in Rochester. I mean, I feel like we just all had really good chemistry, and
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, really, it's just I know that I believe in you and what you bring, and just had the opportunity to bring Steve Shermer, Boston Capper, along with
And do
me.
it our way, right? Like
Yeah,
you
and
guys had
really,
some shackles at Golf Gambling Pod, but like really cultivate a situation where we can allow who I believe to be the best at this to really do their thing, you know?
yeah, and I mean, I feel like I have a lot of creative juice that I like to let loose, and having the opportunity to start something brand new, with the guidelines that you kind of have already have in place, and then just I know Steve too is just insanely excited about just making content that he's excited about, and not
Yeah.
what advertisers want to push down our throats
And
and
Steve is
stuff
such
like
a
that.
hidden gem too. Like I just want
Oh
to
yeah.
butt in there because I can't emphasize this enough. And I handpicked my team of the people that I want to do this with solely based on how good they are at their job and how hard they work. Like, I do not care about how big their following is or how much Twitter clout they are or have or their ability to, bring us a bunch of new subscribers. Like, none of that stuff is Steve or Capper or you are ever going to be tasked with. I believe in the business model of if you create the best content, and this has been my experience in my career, if you create the most knowledgeable, informed golf content and consistently show up and work hard, and Steve is, and one of the things I think we share why we became such fast friends is like he is the only person that I know that dives as deep as I do
Yeah.
into golf courses. I mean, that man is an absolute machine. And I
Yeah.
know that he will fucking work his ass off in the same way that I will until this company becomes a massive, massive success. And so, yeah, I just want to butt in there because I'm sure there are a bunch of listeners that listen to Steve and Capper and you on the Golf Gambling Podcast. But if they don't, I cannot wait for many of my listeners to get inundated with more Steve.
Yeah. I mean, I concur with everything you said. For those of you that don't know, I was kind of in the background behind Steve Shermer and Boston Capper over there at the Golf Gambling Podcast. And I've been working with them for probably about 3 years now. So I've gotten to know them pretty well. We talk pretty much daily. And yeah, I agree. Steve is one of the hardest workers that I've ever met. And I mean, even if it like, I would just like to work with him in general. Even like if
Capper's going to be listening to this like, so what? I'm chopped liver. Like, no, you
no,
have you are phenomenal in your own right, and you're one of my favorite people to podcast with in the world. And I think the chemistry that those two have, which is why I didn't want to
yes,
break up the show, is as good as it gets. I mean,
no,
having Steve and Capper be able to bounce off each other in that way, it's like I have a little bit of that with Brian, for example, who will also be a part of the new company. But I think those shows work the best when you have somebody who is more like the average gambler to bounce off of. Because I know that people like me and Steve can be a lot at times, especially if you're just a recreational bettor. And some of our deep dives into agronomy, it's just like, okay, come on, man. Like, where's the middle ground here? Like, let's talk to me like I'm just a regular guy here. I think the the way that Steve and Capper are able to balance each other out is super super special.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, honestly, I don't think that the podcast would be successful without Boston Capper for that exact reason.
Completely agree. Yeah.
He is like, I mean, he's the reason some people listen. And
Oh yeah.
it's really just because he just makes podcasts flow so well, still provides great knowledge of golf, of football. Like, I mean, and he's a huge gambler, and he's been doing, he's been in the gambling space for a lot longer than me,
Yeah.
even Steve. I mean, and just the value that he brings from being able to just keep the show rolling. I mean, his ad reads are like second to none. Even on that perspective.
And I mean, both of those, I mean, one of the reasons why I was drawn to you three and all of the other people that I've hired fall in this category as well. I just really want to work with people that are good human beings and care about the work and aren't interested in dunking on people or delving into politics or like this company, the foundational ethos of this company is how can we put our subscribers in the best position to actually make the most money possible going forward and cultivate a community of people that love betting on golf and playing DFS golf. And with Capper and Steve and you for that matter, and all the other people that I hired for that matter, there is just a very genuine and authentic aspect to all of those people, and they're all friends, and I wouldn't surround myself with anyone else. So I'm over the moon. We could do another hour on this,
Yeah.
teasing what we're gonna do, but let's probably leave it at there because we got a bunch of
Yeah.
questions to get to. And don't worry, we will talk far more in the upcoming weeks about our content schedule and what we have new planned and more of the logistics of the nitty gritty of the company. But let's keep it rolling with the questions because we got a bunch.
Yeah, absolutely. So next question, Josh Segal wants to know
Who we also just hired, by the way. Josh is gonna run our
oh yeah.
newsletter. Yeah, Josh is awesome.
All right. He wants to know what would be your advice and strategy to a new DFS player with a smaller bankroll. So this is actually an important question for me. I've never really been in the DFS space.
Yeah.
Like
This
I
is a
dabble.
very, very common question. Very
Yeah,
common
so I'm
question.
very interested in this because I'm trying to do some more DFS next year. So
Okay, so again, I could spend a whole podcast on this, and I probably will. I probably should because I did a two-part, 2.5 hour long podcast on my betting philosophy. And a lot of the questions after that were, okay, that was so awesome. Now do DFS. And so I'll keep it brief this time, but I'm probably going to devote a lot more time to the concept and the topic of DFS strategy, certainly at the new company, but just in general on this podcast, hopefully over the next couple of weeks and months. The number one thing that I would say is like, let's say, for example, your bankroll is $50 a week. I feel like that's a fairly reasonable bankroll to invest in DFS as a beginner, especially if you have some bankroll on the betting side. And I know, for example, Josh is a big better and he's had a bunch of success betting golf. But I think um, if you're looking to kind of get started in adding, $50 or so a week in the DFS space, I think my genuine best advice would be to start with a $33 single entry.
huh.
Now, I really do. Now, there are a lot of different opinions on this, and a lot of the people that we're going to be working with in 2025 are high stakes DFS players and some of the best DFS players in the world. Kobe, I'm thinking of specifically, just comes to the top of mind in terms of like one of the best DFS players out there. And Kobe is a guy that makes the vast majority of his money taking on other high stakes players in head to head contests. So there are a number of ways that you could skin the cat here. And there's no right answer, I should say, is what I'm prefacing all of this with. But I think with the $33 single entry, and this is really what I did, like I kind of worked my way up. Now I play in the $100 single entry every week, and I've kind of started to dabble more into the $200 single entry as my bankroll has increased. But even me myself, I am not I don't invest a ton of money into DFS every week. Like my bankroll in DFS, I'm investing around $200 a week you know, probably invest 8 units per week into betting and 1.5 to 2 units per week DFS. But I think if you're just starting, especially because there's so much upward mobility in terms of your bankroll, like if you start having success with a $33 single entry and you build up a little bit of bankroll, okay, then start playing the $100 single entry. That's what I did. But I think just in terms of focusing on the principles of, and a far more approachable than like doing sims and, you know, building 100 lineups, 150 lineups. I know that could be very intimidating. I'm not a
Yeah.
150 lineup guy. I love like the 20 max or the $10 18 max is a contest I play in a lot. But I know that type of stuff can be very unapproachable for a beginner DFS player. I genuinely think if you just stuck to the $33 single entry for a year and really stuck with it. And maybe that's a good experiment for us to follow along if Josh, for example, decides to do that. But I genuinely think that generally the payout structure is pretty good, but I generally think that contest is the easiest entry point to DFS. And I do think if you get to a position where you start feeling more confident in building a larger player pool, because I do get the counter argument to this would be, well, what if you're really good at building like a 20-man player pool and your best skill set in DFS is being able to find some diamonds in the rough and, find these 10 guys under 7.5K that end up being really good plays. Well, if you're only playing the single entry, then that single entry isn't really going to allow you to flex your muscles, right? It's really going to
Yeah.
stifle what you can do. But I just think in terms of like the foundational principle of understanding game theory and building a lineup of 6 guys every week based on the core that we'll have on the site with a couple new twists to it of your own because it's getting to the point with this fall swing now where if you just copy and paste my player pool and my core plays, you're going to be hit with a ton of ownership. So I think it allows you to not have to go super super in the weeds with like multi-build strategy, and it's generally a pretty good payout structure. So long-winded way of saying I would play the $33 single entry every week. If you asked me to pick like one contest for the beginner DFS player, that's probably what I would tell them to do. And again, no right answer on this whatsoever. Like, I don't know, the $20 three max where you're investing $60, the $3 20 max where you're investing $60 to max that contest.
I
All of
like
those
that a
are,
lot.
yeah, all those are great options. But I would say under $50, I would go $33 single entry.
Yeah. So I think that's really good advice. Because is very, very daunting whenever you see someone post on Twitter like they have like just a bajillion lineups in this
I
contest.
know,
You're
I
like,
know,
where do I even start,
I
dude?
know, I know.
How often? So one of my this may be a stupid question, if but whenever you're filling out your lineup, how often are you actually utilizing the full dollar amount, or are you leaving a lot out there a lot of time?
I am a use your salary guy.
Okay.
So I generally, and there's various schools of thoughts for this. And I mean, the only real time that I'm leaving significant amounts of money on the table is if it's like tour championship week, for example, or
Yeah.
a very small field where you really need to find ways to differentiate yourself. But I generally use my salary. I think that for nearly every single one of my lineups, and there's building tools in sims where you could kind of create this role. I'm a hand build guy. Like the most that I'll play every week is 20 to 40 lineups would be the absolute most depending on contest. But for me, usually what I have done primarily this year is like the $100 single entry, $33 single entry, and then either the $3 20 max or the $10 18 max, which again puts my investment in the 200 to $300 zone.
Yeah.
And I feel like I get a lot out of that. And I think those contests generally allow you to build in a way where you don't really need to and I generally am on players that I play very contrarian. So I'm generally in a position where I'm fading a lot of the chalk anyway. But, I think if you're playing those contests and just getting started, I don't think there's any reason to leave over $500 on the table in one of those. I mean, I guess you could make the
Okay.
argument in single entry to continue to get different, but a lot of people that play single entry think that you want to play the safest guys in single entry because you only have one lineup and making it through the cut is so valuable. I don't really agree with that at all. I think single entries are a great opportunity to get contrarian on some of the bad chalk plays that you really and have some conviction about some of those bad chalk plays because
Yeah.
some of those guys get contrarian, but or some of those guys get super inflated. But
Yeah.
overall, I mean, I just speaking from how I play, I don't leave typically more than
Okay.
$500 on the table in a given
I
week.
I really like that idea of someone tracking the $33 single entry for the whole season. That I think we might
Yeah, we'll
implement
do
that
that.
as some social content. So
Yeah.
I like that. Um, okay, I think we answered that one pretty well. Do you agree?
Yeah, let's move
Okay.
on.
All right. So Bob Rotella, would love to hear your thoughts as someone who travels and golfs a lot about all the components, requirements, and considerations for a perfect lad's golf trip. This is an awesome question.
This is such a phenomenal question. And again, I could do an 8-part podcast series on this. I go on a lot of golf trips. I travel a lot. It's probably my biggest passion in terms of what I love to do for hobbies in my spare time. I think it's the number one thing that I would tell you if I'm not spending time with my girlfriend, friends, or family. There's nothing I love in the world more than traveling to see new and different golf courses. And over the last 4 to 5 years, I've been really fortunate to develop like a main group that I love to travel with. We went to Ireland together. We went to Streamsong earlier this year. We just got back from celebrating my 30th birthday on a golf trip.
Oh, that's
We
nice.
already have Sand Valley booked for next year. So we've kind of developed I've developed my main squad
Yeah.
where we make it a priority to at at least once a year get a trip in.
Having the right guys is important.
And I'm going to tell you exactly because I do think it is really important. And I think that's what the question is asking, right? And I think the reason why I was just thinking about this earlier today when I was taking some notes for these questions. I think the reason why our group works is that we're all there for the same reason. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. So for us, everyone in that group, we all love seeing great golf courses. And I know it's hard to believe that I've actually found people that are as into the architecture stuff as much as I am, but all of these guys love traveling to play great golf courses. And our goal on these trips is our number one priority is see as many great new courses as possible. We like to gamble and we always have a nice little competition going between us, but we're never out there gambling for that much money. We've all kind of found our comfort zone where like we like a little friendly competition and we will have no problem. Like no one will be offended if one of us is like, hey, I'm going to need to see that 2.5 footer. It's also never crazy competitive to the point where we care that much about giving each other short putts, particularly if we're trying to, you know, keep pace of play going, which is a huge priority for us as well. So at the end of the day, for our group, it's really not about our score. It's not about how we play. We care most about playing on, the faster side and getting in as much golf as humanly possible in at as many great golf courses as humanly possible. And I think if you can find a group where everyone in your group is on the same page in terms of what you are looking to get out of that golf trip, the better, right? And I think there are a lot of people out there, their goal And there's absolutely nothing wrong with this. Like some of my favorite people in the world to play golf with are heavy drinkers on the course. But a lot of people approach these golf trips and their goal is to, get away from their wives and kids and job and take a fucking load off and get
Yeah.
fucked up. And there's nothing wrong with that. On the flip side, I've also played in groups, like one of my main groups in LA where it's pretty competitive and we're gambling for more money and we're putting everything out and we're all really good players and the overall level of play is just better players, a bit more serious. And, if you took people from that group and that kind of vibe and put them with, the former, where a lot of people in that group is just to get fucked up and have fun. And the other half's goal is to play more seriously. You're probably going to run into some issues. Like I'll tell you, I
Yeah.
remember I went on a golf trip to Bandon Dunes a couple of years ago. I'll tell you this short. I'll tell you this story shortly, and then I want to get your take because I know you do a bunch of traveling for golf too. But I went on this golf trip to Bandon Dunes a couple of years ago, and I was the last inclusion in that group. I took the spot of somebody that canceled last minute. Uh, but I was going with one of my closest friends, but the other four or five people on the trip, I didn't know at all. So I didn't really know what I was getting into there. I know I, had this awesome buddy, but I didn't know the other four or five guys. So I really didn't know what to expect. You'd think if it's a group of guys going to Bandon Dunes, like you're going to be in pretty familiar territory. Like
Yeah.
I had no problem making friends with any of the guys, but that trip, for example, was just a total smorgasbord of like everyone was there for different reasons. The skill levels were ranging from like almost scratch, really good players to guys that couldn't break 100, could barely get off the
Oh
tee.
man.
So pace of play was all over the map. It was harder to gamble when, you're given 18 strokes.
Yeah.
But again, you can overcome that. I think you can still have a ton of fun on a golf trip with varying skill levels. The bigger problem was like for me and my friend, and I'll just say Kobe, it was Kobe who was on that trip with, Kobe created the trip, and but there were a bunch of cancellations. So Kobe even got in a point where he didn't know some of the guys heading into the trip.
Oh wow.
But anyway, the bigger problem is for like me and Kobe, we're at fucking Banded Dunes. Like we're
Yeah.
trying to play 36 holes a day. We're trying to pack in as much golf as humanly possible because that's one of the most special places in the world. And we don't know when we're coming back. And one of the other players in our group just didn't want to play 36 holes a day. He
Uh,
was he was not in the physical shape to
yeah.
do that. So we get to the second day and I think we play Old Mac in the morning and our afternoon round is at Pacific Dunes. The only time that we're playing Pacific Dunes in that trip, which in my opinion is the best public golf course in America. Like it depends on my mood. I kind of go back and forth between Pacific, Old Mac, and Bandon Trails as my favorite Bandon course. But for my money, Pacific Dunes is a fucking masterpiece. Like I think it's a better golf course pound for pound than Pebble Beach. It is, again, about as good as it gets for public golf in America. And one of the guys in the group after our round at Old Mac was just like, I'm good. I'm out. Um, I'm not playing. And it kind of ruined the gambling aspect. We had like a weekend long team game going on that it kind of
Yeah.
ruined, but
That.
whatever. At the end of the day, it was kind of just like it put a little bit of a damper on it because it's like Pacific Dunes, man. You traveled across the country to rural Oregon. You've had this trip planned for years, and you're just gonna skip Pacific fucking Dunes?
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, I don't care. I'm tired, not doing it. And again, I can't lie. It kind of put a little bit of a damper on the trip. I mean, whatever.
Yeah.
We still had a phenomenal afternoon at Pacific Dunes. You want to do your own thing, whatever. But I think it illustrates that, like, this was an example of a golf trip where people in the group were there for different reasons and we're on completely different pages. And honestly, like I get it. I think the 36 hole a day thing is not for everyone. I'm not blaming him for not wanting to play that day. But the larger point is you want to find a group where everybody is there for the same reasons.
Yeah.
And once you do, I mean, I will probably be traveling to play great golf courses with my group for hopefully the next 50 years of my life. Like
Yeah.
it's the best thing ever. I get chills talking about how happy a great golf trip makes me. But you got to find your people. So Cam,
Yeah.
you travel from time to time for golf. You have anything to add here?
So, I mean, a lot of my travel is like if I'm going somewhere for work, then I'm bringing my clubs.
Yeah.
Like, and I fly Southwest, so I bring my clubs for free. So it doesn't matter. But I kind of want to pick your brain since you're talking about Bandon so much. So my 30th birthday is next October, and me and the
Book
boys,
it. Get on the phone now. I mean, I have some ends that may be able to make it a little bit
no,
easier for you,
don't
but
worry.
Bandon is a tough. Like I'm already booked for Sand Valley in October of 2025, and we booked that 16, 17 months in advance.
So my birthday is early October,
Okay.
and right when the list came out, me and all my buddies put in, and they banned and changed it. So for the months of October to December, it's at a lower rate because you never really know what to
Hmm.
expect with the weather.
By the way, both times I've been to Bandon have been in September, October, so it's still great weather.
Yeah. And I think I asked you about this a while ago, honestly, because I've been trying to plan this for a long time, but they changed it to a lottery system. So if you want any tee time between October and December, you have to put into a lottery to even get a time to call and schedule your trip.
Yeah, yeah.
So I put in, and I had all of my group of four, so three other guys put in for the lottery. I get an email back, hey, you weren't selected. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'm not, like I was planning on going for my 30th birthday. We're not going to get to go. I get a call, one of my buddies, he gets an email. He's in the A group, like top 50 of out of everyone selected. And so he's like, dude, we're freaking out. The next day he gets a call. He's literally in like a work meeting. He gets a call and he's like, "Hey, this is Bandon Dunes. I got to step out." The customer was like, "Oh, are you going?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm trying to schedule." He's like, "Oh, you're good. Go." And he schedules it for we have the first weekend in October. I get there October 2nd. I play Pacific Dunes that afternoon. And then we're going to be there on the third, fourth, and the fifth, and we're going to play all six courses.
Oh,
So,
that's and you're it's funny because our timing will I mean, I'll be at Sand Valley next year
yeah,
when you're at Bandon Dunes. So we
yeah,
hopefully we can create some content around that. But
exactly.
that's
Yeah,
all dude, it's the most special play. It is I think it is ever and I love to be the contrarian and say this place is overrated. And I do feel firmly that Pebble Beach is overrated, for example. I'm not gonna say Bandit Dudes is underrated because
it's pretty high rated. Yeah,
it's very high rated, but that place is every bit as good as advertised. And there's a podcast that I did with a caddy from Bandon. It's 2 hours with Kobe, and Kobe's really the guy you should be talking to because Kobe
yeah.
is the mayor of Bandon Dudes. Kobe's been there 6, 7 times. I think
Oh wow.
I've been there twice, so I know the lay of the land really well. But Kobe really knows his stuff around that place. But dude, I'm so excited for you because
So
it is one of the most special places on earth.
I'm unbelievably excited, but I'm also in already in the mode where I'm like, I need to start prepping like now. Like just to be able to walk 36 2 days in a row. So we're
Yeah.
doing 1, 2, 2, 1, and then leaving.
Yep. That's a
Ju-
good way. That's a good way to do it. You don't necessarily if you're going there for like 4 days, I think doing 36 2 out of the 4 days
Yeah.
is the way to do it.
Yeah. And so I am a little nervous about having to walk that much. But I mean, I already walk a ton of golf in general whenever I play by myself. So if I'm by myself, I'm like not, with an older guy or whatever, I'm walking.
Okay.
And so I'm not too worried about it, but also like I don't want it to be like a painful experience.
Yeah. Well, I may be the wrong person to talk about this because I'm vehemently opposed to taking golf
Cart golf.
carts. Like
Yeah.
I really don't like it. I
Yeah, I have a
walk,
strong take about this too.
yeah, I walk as much as humanly possible. And some people at my club in LA, which is a good walking course, but a lot of people take carts at that, think I'm crazy for the amount that I walk. But I just love walking a golf course. And I think you can learn more from walking a golf course. And I like the opportunity in between strokes to regroup and think about my next shot as I'm walking to it. You're going to be fine, dude. If you're walking already and used to walking 18 holes, particularly in Texas, like you probably
Oh,
play a lot of golf. And I think one of the reasons why Bandon is easier for 36 is you can get hit with some, and trust me, walking 36 and like wind and rain is brutal. But if you get somewhat decent weather, you're
yeah.
not battling, you don't have to worry about heat. Okay. And some of the toughest
Yeah.
36 hole days, I love playing 36, but some of the toughest 36 hole days that I've ever had, like this summer, I played 36 holes at two Westchester golf courses in the middle of August when it was super, super hot and humid. It's almost more difficult
Yeah.
to play 36 when it's super hot
Oh yeah.
than when it is a little bit windy and, high 50s, low 60s.
Yeah, by hole
I think,
14, you're
yeah,
just hacking at it almost because you're so
yeah,
tired.
I think you will be fine, dude. The only advice that I could give would be maybe sprinkle in the occasional 36 hole walking day
Yeah.
beforehand. But that's what I mean. The guy that didn't want to play 36, like he was not, he never walks. He was not in, like he should have said something before the trip because it was never gonna, like he was struggling getting through 18, right? So,
Yeah.
you know,
I'm
I
definitely
I
gonna
I think
I'm definitely
extreme examples are
Mhm.
going to 36, going to expect to be fine playing 36 at Bandon when you never even walk 18, right? Which you did.
Yeah. Yeah, I got in an argument with Kobe on Twitter actually because he was talking about how golf should never be played in a cart, and I've actually not been able to finish a round in Houston in I think it was July or August. I literally I couldn't finish the round because I was so dehydrated. Like I bring,
Yeah.
three
Yeah.
Gatorades, water, and still just nothing prepares you for the humidity
Yep.
Houston in August. I started my round at 8 a.m. And even then, like by hole, I think it was 16, my ankles and my calves just locked up. Couldn't finish.
Yeah. And again, I'm probably the wrong person to talk about this with because I'm a psycho and I've been walking golf courses since I was 7 years old. Um, and I'm a very active person who just, my body's used to walking. I walk a
Yeah.
lot when I'm in New York City. I'm even a non-golfing day. I'm kind of a 10,000 steps a day guy if I
Yeah.
can, but I have zero doubt in my mind that you'll be able to navigate 36 holes per day abandoned. In fact,
I think I'll
at,
be all right.
when the golf is that good, you almost forget about it. Like
Yeah. Oh
I
yeah.
think I think playing 36 holes a day at a mid-tier course that you're not super psyched about and you're just doing it to do it, like those are the tougher 36 hole days, but you almost like leave your body abandoned.
Yeah. I on this third day, I got Old Mac and Bandon Trails on the same day. Like I'm just gonna be
That is
so
going to be
excited
the
to even
most one
get
of the
out
most
there.
peaceful days.
Yeah.
I That is such a good
Yeah. I'm
36
so
all day
excited.
because those courses complement each other so nicely
One
too.
one more thing on the carts. I think if they just did away with golf carts altogether, that we would actually see golf being played at a faster pace. And the reason for this is if you
Totally
put
agree.
two 18 handicaps in a cart together and one of
Yes.
them hits it right, the other hits it
It's
left,
detrimental to pace of play.
it really
100%.
is. It really
100%.
is. Yeah. I definitely agree with you there. I love it's just the most relaxing thing ever. All right.
And like, let me just say one more thing on the carts piece, but one of my favorite golf courses is Nanea in Hawaii. And that golf course is built on a lava field where it
Oh,
is
cool.
not a walking golf course. Like
Is it the Big
that golf,
Island?
yeah, Big Island.
Yeah.
That golf course cannot, it couldn't have been built as a walking course because you're literally
Mhm.
the golf course is built on lava. So it needs to be some of the walks from greens to tees. You need to kind of drive around through uh, rock, right?
Were the bunkers black sand?
They weren't. They're not black sand,
Oh,
but some golf courses in Utah are like that. I'm dying to check it. There's a one with red sand. I'm dying to check out. But I'm not opposed to, particularly if you have health issues and stuff. Whatever you want to go take a cart, go take a cart. And some of the best golf courses are really only able, like Nene is an example of a top 100 golf course in America that can only be built with carts. Like some
yeah.
great golf courses, the best routing of them needs to be with golf carts, right?
Yeah.
Because of the land.
Hmm.
But I'm with you, man. If I have the opportunity to walk, I'm always walking. I'm always walking.
Cool. All right. The next question is from the ups and downs, and I really like this one too. If you were to build a brand new course, where would it be? What type of grass would it have? What would the yardage be? What would the style be? And what would the intent be behind the course? Meaning like a good country club, a public course, a championship style course meant to be played by the best golfers in the entire world. Where would you start?
I wish I didn't get the, and this will probably be our last one of the night. We can finish with this one because I want to give a thoughtful answer here, and I want to give a thoughtful answer to the next questions too. So we'll have to come back for part two
Okay.
because this is really
Yeah,
fun, and
absolutely.
we left a lot of great questions on the table that I promise we will get to. Again, I thought about this a lot. There's no one right answer, but I'll tell you where my mind went, and I started thinking about this from a land standpoint and a business standpoint. Like, where does a certain style of golf course make the most sense to be built? And this, you're going to have to let me sell you on this because when I tell you what came to mind, you are probably going to say, well, you're basically just trying to build a golf course in the golf mecca of America. The last thing this place needs and is going to have no shot being recognized at great because it's going to get lost in the shuffle of all the other great golf courses in close proximity to it. It's never going to oversee a national or a Shinnecock or a Maidstone or even a Friar's Head, which is a phenomenal new modern golf course in Long Island. But I would build a great public golf course on Long Island. And I'll tell
Uh,
you why. I'll tell you why I would. Because the golf, and I'm very inundated with this because I grew up going to this place. I play a lot of golf in this area. And I truly believe, I mean, it has my two favorite golf courses in America in this area. And it really has, in my opinion, it is some of the best land you'll find. I mean, the turf there, the natural sandy soil, the climate, how it is in the summer, uh, the wind, the setting, kind of close to a body of water. Um, I truly don't have enough good things to say about golf courses on Long Island, but we have really, really lost the plot in terms of Hampton's golf courses and there now being no in between. So essentially, if you want to play golf in the Hamptons, if you want to play a great golf course in the Hamptons, you are dealing with amongst the most exclusive golf courses in America that 0.0001% of people will ever get to play. I mean, they are amongst the toughest invites in golf. Shinnecock, National, Maidstone, Friar's Head, Sabonic. It's going to take an arm and a like even I'm pretty well connected in that world, and anytime I can make it out to one of those golf courses, it's incredibly special for me because they're just so tough to get on for the average player, and the memberships there are so old and so genuinely uninterested in adding members or a lot of those golf courses take some guest play, but it's just really insular, right? And so the Hamptons has seen this massive boom. I mean, it's been insane in terms of the money that is going into that place right now. I remember growing up and going to Sag Harbor with my dad, and it was an old whaling town. And now it's got like some of the most expensive restaurants in America, and it's just influencer and celebrity central. And so now the Hamptons has become so sceney, and so many people are renting there. Like my dad, for example, he had a house in Sag Harbor, and around the pandemic, and Sag Harbor is kind of adjacent to it's one of the Hamptons, but again, it's kind of this old like whaling town. It was always the non Hamptons place to go. Like it was kind of an oasis, an escape from the crazy prices and traffic that you'd see in Southampton and East Hampton. And around COVID time, when people started, a lot of the money from New York realized that they could work from home, the real estate prices in the Hamptons started soaring. And so my dad was basically like, I almost feel like I have to sell this house because
Yeah.
because these prices are just out the need to go to the Hamptons and be
Yeah.
in the Hamptons during the summer is out of control. Okay. And I don't think it's going anywhere. I just think that more and more people want to be in that area over the summer. And if you're one of those people that wants to go to the Hamptons and rent, because you're not going to be able to play great golf there because it is impossible to get on those golf courses. Really, really freaking hard to get. Even like the Bridge and Atlantic, um, and Noyak and Southampton and East Hampton. These are all private golf courses. Um, with, I mean, forget about joining if you're Shinnecock and National or Maidstone. Those are all super, super old money and impossible to get into. If you want to join Friar's Head or Sabonic, you better. I mean, Friar's Head's $750,000 initiation fee. I mean, the Bridge, I believe, is 1.2. Sabonic, I
Oh
think,
my
is
God.
1.2. They're the most expensive golf courses to get into, whether you buy or rent in America. Okay. Even like Atlantic, the wait list for Atlantic, which is a very good second tier golf course in the Hamptons. It's like 500K to join Atlantic. Just forget about it. So if
God.
you so if you are, I mean, even a homeowner, a new homeowner in the Hamptons, and you're looking to join a golf course, or primarily so many more people are renting in the Hamptons now because, you know,
Yeah.
the people that own homes in the Hamptons have realized that it's so, if you could stomach not being there, you're going to make a killing based on renting your golf course out. So what do all those people that rent in the Hamptons and have disposable incomes, where are they playing golf? Because
Yeah.
you're not going to be able to join any of those golf courses or get invited to any of those golf courses. I mean, maybe, but it's just really, really hard. So
And
I think
correct me
that
if I'm wrong, the public just on Long Island and New York in general, if you want to play on a public course, you gotta wait. Like the times to get on are insane, and there's just so many people and so little supply
so
that it's almost
exactly.
not fun to go play.
Exactly. So you've Montauk Downs, which is a good golf course. It's all the way out in Montauk. But Montauk Downs is like you basically, they have bots that are taking all those weekend tee times because
Oh,
there's so many,
yeah.
and Montauk Downs is good. But it is not worth the arm and a leg that
Yeah.
you have to pull. Or, you're driving an hour on a Saturday morning in brutal traffic to go play Beth Page. And Beth Page is not even any guarantees that you're going to be able to get on Beth Page. Beth Page is an arm and a leg to get on as well.
Yeah.
So I genuinely believe that the Hamptons has kind of lost the plot and that there's no in between. And that you have
Huh.
so many people that now just want to be in the Hamptons, but there's no reasonable pathway for them to play golf. And so I think what I would do is I would build a great public golf course in around the Hamptons in Long Island. That was the first place my mind went from a business standpoint. In
Man,
terms
that
of like
sounds,
it's a pretty I sold you, right?
yeah.
Like
Oh, absolutely.
I thought about this one a lot, and there are a lot of great answers. Like there are a lot of places that if I really thought about it, I could build an awesome case for why this place should have a golf course or
Man, this
this
sounds
golf
a
course
lot.
would succeed in this
Yeah.
area.
This sounds a lot like Austin. So I have a couple buddies that live there, so I take trips down there and play with them every now
Yeah,
and then.
I'm dying to get out there because my good buddy Joseph Amania, my best friend from high school, just moved there. I'm dying to play golf in Austin.
So we went to one of the public courses, and to get a Saturday tee time or even a Friday tee time, I want to say, you have to go to the course at and get in line and for an opening at 5:30
So
a.m.
it's like Bethpage, yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's on Tuesday. So you do that on Tuesday to get a weekend tea time. So he did that, and I went out there. We went out there, and the greens were just like trash.
Yeah.
Like you were playing plinko on the greens, and there's still a line at 5:30 a.m. on Tuesday to get a tea time there.
Hmm.
It
Yeah.
just it doesn't make any sense to me. And it's you like why is there not more just even average golf courses in some of
I
these
know.
places?
And just looking at the recent rankings list that came out, we don't have enough very good, affordable public golf
Yeah.
courses. Like you've gotten into this position where it's either, the Meccas, your Bandon Dunes, your Pebble Beach, your Sand Valley, even your Stream Song, which I think is excellent, but these very remote locations that people will travel to and make a weekend out of it. And even like Pinehurst is insanely
Yeah.
expensive. Pinehurst is so, so, so expensive. TPC Sawgrass. You want to play TPC Sawgrass? TPC Sawgrass is like $800 around now, I think. So anyway, if you want to play the best public golf course in America, and outside of like Rustic Canyon and Pasatiempo, I think are the best two deals in America on public golf courses from an architecture standpoint. I think those are the two strongest public golf courses now that are under $500 to play. But yeah, I mean, I think that there is absolutely a need for better public golf courses. I mean, you got some diamonds in the rough, like I said, with Rustic Canyon, but even Rustic Canyon's a 5 hour round with a full tee sheet and super bumpy greens, and that's an hour from LA. So anyway, I mean, you know, that's what came to mind in terms
Yeah.
of this place needs this. And I think in terms of what type of golf course it would be. And again, I could do how I got into this, how I got so obsessed with golf architectures. Like I was that crazy person that other people were, drawing in school. I was drawing golf holes, right? Where other people were doodling. I was drawing golf
That's
holes.
awesome.
And I do not pretend to act like I could just design a golf course tomorrow. I mean, there are so many things um, that golf, getting to know some architects, like there's so many things that I could not remotely begin to. These are all people with degrees in agronomy and people that understand how to drive bulldozers and have learned so much about everything that goes into building a golf course. So it's super easy for me to sit here and say like, "Hey, I do this, 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 this," when in reality, that's never how it plays out. You're generally every time you're designing a golf course, you're generally dealing with a lot of guardrails in terms of what you can do and what you can build. And the land that you have to work with. But in terms of the design philosophy, I think about my two favorite golf courses in America are both Long Island golf courses. National Golf Links of America and the Creek. And both those golf courses are CB McDonald, Seth Rayner golf courses. And I think that's probably the type of architecture that I respond to the most.
So
Um,
for those of us, I've never played on Long Island. What is that? Does that look like hills? Does it look like pretty flat, like link style?
oh,
Like there are a lot of
I'll
trees.
send you the every hole. Golf Digest does these great every hole app videos, and I watch the every hole at National Golf Links of America when I'm feeling sad because it restores my faith in golf. I think it is um, one of our great architectural masterpieces. But there's really good land out there,
Okay.
and there's really good turf out there. I mean, I couldn't tell you off the top of my head what the agronomy is like at a place like National or a place like Friars Head or a place like the Creek. I all want to tell you that they have bent greens. I know Friars has pure bent greens. I know the Creek has pure bent greens. Not totally sure on what they do for fairway and rough. But in terms of the aesthetics of the golf course, I really respond to the aesthetics of Long Island golf courses. Like if you look at pictures of Friars Head or National or Shinnecock. You have firm turf with fast bent grass greens and high grass that lines the fairways. And that's just an aesthetic that I respond to. And some of the golf courses in the Nebraska Sandhills, which I is another major blind spot for me and place that I need to hit in the upcoming years because that may have some of the best turf and the best soil for golf in America. That, along with Michigan, those are two places that, if you're just probably pulling, and there's a reason why, like Tom Doak lives in Michigan and Mike DeVries lives in Michigan. I think if you're pulling a bunch of people that are more well traveled than me and have seen even more golf courses in America, they would tell you that the turf in Long Island, the turf in Michigan and northern Michigan, the turf in the Nebraska Sandhills is about as good as it gets. But in terms of the aesthetic, um, I think it would probably be golden age influence. I mean, I think like
Okay.
so
Yeah.
tough because I do respond so strongly to. I'm such a diehard Core and Crenshaw fan, um, but I think it would. I'd put a lot of my own flavor into it. Uh, but I have thought tirelessly about my version of certain template holes, like some of the spin that I would put on certain template holes. Like the Creek, for example, the sixth is a reverse Redan punch bowl green. It's like the most unique. It's my favorite green in America, and that's like CB McDonald's kind of own slant on a very familiar template. And I think a lot of the holes that I think about a lot are familiar golf holes. Like I'd certainly draw inspiration place from places, but what would be my slant on this familiar template? So I would certainly draw influence from, a CB McDonald or Seth Rayner is just typically the type of architecture that brings me the most joy and makes me feel the most when I play a golf course is playing golf courses with that type of architecture. Um, but you know, the last thing I would say is I have no desire to build a championship golf course. And I think that puts an added layer of guardrails. Like it is so hard until they roll the ball back to design a golf course for the modern professional tour player. And it is going to dramatically affect the routing and how you design that golf course if you are designing it with the mindset of like, oh, I need to protect par and have literally the best players in the world shoot even par on this golf course. I mean, maybe if I got into it down the road, that would be a fun challenge to design a golf course that way. But you listen to someone like Tom Doak talk about it because he got asked this question recently on a fried egg podcast. And he was like, I, I don't think designing championship golf courses is necessarily the best utilization of what I can do as an architect. Like, I could do it and it'd be a fun challenge. And there are some golf courses that he's designed that do host professional golf tournaments, but none of the golf courses that he designed were for the main goal is to be hosting professional golf tournaments. And his golf courses are amongst the best modern golf courses in America. So I would have, if I'm, especially if I'm only designing one golf course, I mean, the Creek is 6,400 yards from the tips. I think National is 6,700 yards from the tips. And both those golf courses, particularly if the wind's blowing, are very, very hard still for the scratch player. I would build a very playable public golf course on Long Island. I think that's my answer. I would not have any care in the world or intention of it hosting professional tournaments. My priority would be the architecture and the design.
Would you shoot for like $100 a round?
I mean, I could charge triple
You could
that at the
charge a
Hamptons and
million.
get
Yeah.
away with it. But
Yeah.
that's the other consideration that is so difficult to think about here is, does the golf course need to make money? So many golf courses out there need to make money, and there's other certain golf courses that
I
don't really need to make
don't.
money. So that is another added wrinkle of, does the golf course need to make money, would affect so much of the decision making process. In my perfect world, I would do something like Rustic Canyon on Long Island. I would build an architectural masterpiece that people could play for $50. I know that's not realistic. And I would just create another situation where the demand would be off the charts. But I would love to be in a position where the most amount of people could play it and see it, because I think that's
Yeah.
another frustration, is that so much of the best architecture in America is just so impossible for the average person to see. Like, it's just the hoops that you have to jump through and the network. I mean, I've been at this for 5 years. My passion in life is traveling to go see great golf courses. And I
Mhm.
have built a massive network in the private golf world. And I'm very fortunate enough to see some of the great golf courses in America. I'm not going to apologize for that either, because I've spent my life cultivating that as my passion. So when you make it your passion and you're presumably a decent hang who plays fast and is a decent player, you know, you're going to be able to cultivate that community. And I've spent years cultivating that network. Some of the greatest golf courses in America, I still have no chance in hell of seeing. Like, I mean, maybe if I really tried, I really try not to impose with that stuff and let it happen organically.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of been the key for me, is really never imposing and asking to play certain golf courses and letting that happen organically. But there are golf courses that I have no idea if I'm ever going to get to play. None. I mean, architectural masterpieces. And that is with spending years cultivating a network of like minded people, years of doing that. So there needs to be, and I think a lot of the people that hate on golf course architecture really just haven't like had the opportunity to see great golf courses. Like, they just think, and I get it, because I sometimes I feel like I develop a resentment towards the private golf world and the fact that so many of the great golf courses are private. And so I kind of really understand the argument of like, fuck this. Like, it's so impossible for me to ever step foot on this club that, you know, screw all the 100 members that get to play it every day. It's not going to be me. Um, I really understand that and get that. So I would love to be able to create more public golf courses. I mean, there's barely any. It's like Pasatiempo is the only public Alistair McKenzie golf course in America. So if you wanted to see Alistair McKenzie, who is maybe the greatest golf architect of all time. And there's very sparing in terms of Seth Rayner and CB McDonald too. There's a few of them. Um, but all of their best work is private. All of these golf courses' best work is private. So anyway, I could
Yeah.
do 10 podcasts on this. We got to stop. You got to cut me off here because this is clearly a topic I'm passionate about and could talk about
Yeah.
for hours. Um, but let's stop there.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. We got a lot of other good questions that I'm really interested to hear your answer on too. So we'll
Want to
have to
do one quick hitter at the very end, like 12 or 13? You pick between 12 or 13. I have like a one word answer for that.
um all right. All right, this one will be quick. Probability of someone getting the Grand Slam next year.
I'm gonna say no. Um, I'm still in the camp that believes that Rory McIlroy will win another major before he retires. I don't think it's going to be a Masters, personally. It just spending 3 days with Rory at Augusta last year. I think the boogeyman is too big there at this current
Yeah.
moment in time. He has the skill set for it, but I don't think it's a coincidence that some of Rory's best major performances over the last couple of years have been at golf courses where he didn't have like an innate connection to. And then you get into Spieth at the PGA. I don't think Spieth's winning Quail Hollow, although he did go 5-0 at the President's Cup there. He's played good golf at Quail Hollow. I don't think Spieth's winning Quail Hollow. And then what else? Like Brooks has to win
Yeah.
two. Rom has
Brooks,
to win
Rom,
two.
Xander.
None of those guys are winning two majors next year. The parity is just too great in golf. Scotty's not
Yeah.
winning three. Brooks and Rom aren't winning two. I do think Rom might win the Open next year. Um,
Ooh.
yeah, I don't know. We'll talk about that more. The next
Yeah.
two episodes will be doing the major previews with Steve. So we'll talk a lot more about my major predictions in the upcoming weeks. But and then we got to do a part two, Cam.
Yeah,
If you
absolutely.
don't mind joining me for a part two, we just there was now at this point probably 15 questions that I got that I just didn't even get to scratch the surface on, and I probably went too long at the end. Like people didn't necessarily hear need to hear me stand on a soapbox about public versus private golf, but I could. It's a topic I'm super passionate about.
I
Um,
think a lot of people are going to agree with you on that. So,
but I really want to try to answer these questions thoughtfully. Like, I got another question in here, which we're not going to answer today, about junior golf and what I would do differently as a junior golfer. I have so many thoughts on that. Like, I could spend so much time thoughtfully answering that question.
yeah.
Another question was, where would you start when looking at a golf course? Like, work from the green, start from the tee. Like, what should you know? How do you dissect a golf course from an architecture standpoint? Like, dude, I could spend 8 podcasts on that one.
Yeah.
So I know the junior golf one is big for you too. So
Well,
that'll be
I
number
feel like
one in our next podcast.
I have a different like upbringing on that. But we can go into that more later.
That'll be because I know the guy who, and I've actually given him some advice. This is a father who has a kid that's getting into junior golf, and I've
Oh, well,
given
then
him,
my advice might be perfect then.
yeah, I've given him some advice in the past. But he's a great guy. That's D Flowers, I think,
Yeah, D Flowers.
is the Twitter handle. So that'll be number one on part two. But
All
that's
right.
it for me. Let's wrap here, my friend. Thanks for doing this, Cam.
Yeah, of course. Anytime, Andy.